What it is, y'all. Center Hill, see the half, what it do? Hey, Church Street, South Grand, stand up. Yeah, here we go. What up? What's happening, baby? Are you haters? Kick it at me. I got you had a good time, didn't you? I hear ya, and I'm
What's going on, everybody? This is your boy T Night, and I'm back with another episode of First Night Out. I know the intro sounds so cliche. Eventually, I'm gonna find my own voice. I'm gonna say whatever it is that's on my mind in the beginning, and just go with it. But for right now, this is your boy T Night, back with another episode of First Night Out. So just I, somebody asked me, like, you're all over the place. You have to make it about a subject and you have to talk about these topics and blah, blah, blah. That's not why I want to do this shit. What I want to do this shit for is for me. It's therapeutic. It's for me. That is why it's called First Night Out. And I'm not sure if people remember. I had an intro. Not an intro, but I had a pilot episode, and I talked about what First Night Out means to me. So more importantly, First Night Out to me is basically my experience when I'm doing whatever I want to do. My experiencing for the first time, and so I always think about that first night. That first night is always the funnest night whenever you're on vacation, your first date, your first experience with your son, your daughter, whatever it is. That first night, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have those fond memories and they can recall anything about that first night of whatever great experience that you have. And so, when I used to rap, I kind of had this in my mind where it's not really one subject matter that I'm versed in. So I talk about a slew of things. As you can see in the background, you have, I have a globe, I have skyscrapers, I have sports, I have all these different things that I love. You see the shot glasses at the top. You see books, theory books, and my accounting books, my Will Smith books. So, and I'm a wine enthusiast. Sometimes you'll probably see a wine bottle in the back somewhere. I don't know, but it's just a lot of things that I'm interested in. And why not talk about everything that I'm interested in? Or why not talk about things that I might not be as interested in and I find out and I want to teach the world about what the fuck I just learned or whatever it is that I want to be interested in. So one of the things, so I have a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and you know, I have a lot of people that are in psychology or have, their undergrad, masters, or doctorate in psychology, and then being in the mental health facility, working there, you begin to like pick up a lot of lingo. You pick up a lot of things that you never thought or never knew of, and so you start to put two and two together when you've watched movies, when you've watched like shows or whatever it is. You heard it on a fictional movie, show, or book, or whatever it is, and so you want to like hone in on what is it exactly what you're feeling. So I'm gonna begin by saying, do anybody know about what is Stockholm syndrome? Because I always thought this was like fictional. A couple of years ago, um, Money Heist. I think Money Heist came out, and I'm not for certain. I think it came out either before the pandemic or maybe during the pandemic. I'm not exactly sure when it came out, but Money Heist was basically a movie, of course, heist in a bank where it starts off by with these group of robbers going to bank. They have these masks, very cool looking masks, it took over, Halloween for a couple years. People want to dress like that. It pretty much captivated the whole Netflix audience and things like that, and it was pretty good. I was definitely in tune. But one of the characters, um, you know, was held this girl hostage inside of the vault, and she was a bank, teller, or she worked there. And so during um, you know, the thing, she falls in love with her captor, and you just think like, oh, they just adding that shit for the dramatics. They just adding it because it just looks cool, and they want to have a love story and things like that. And so she names herself because she falls in love. She wants to help them and shit like that. She names herself Stockholm, and it was very interesting. And so fast forward, like, what does that mean? Like, it came up in a conversation that I was having, and me personally, I've never experienced this with like a actual person, right? And I began to talk about my experience as far as it, goes with workplaces and things like that. And so I began to like, damn, am I experiencing Stockholm syndrome? Like, what does that look like when it's not an actual person that you're like, you're not being held captive of, they're not capturing you like a person. But what if it's like an entity? What if it's a ideology? What if it's like an idea that holds you captive for so long, or like a negative thing, but you begin to fall in love with the idea, even though it's hurting you or it's a bad idea? What if the job is very negative, and a lot of things that you're experiencing, that you become, you fall in love with taking care of something that's hurting you physically, mentally, emotionally, but you have to, but I think us as black people, we call it Captain Save 'em complex, right? I mean, if that's not the same to, but it sounds similar. Like, hey, you see somebody, a damsel in distress, and you want to do everything you can to save that person, or you save whatever it is that is going on with something that you attached yourself to, and so now you want to save them. Like, is that what Stockholm syndrome is a little bit? And I want to explore. As I talk about this, I'm learning at the same goddamn time. What makes this unique about me with First Night Out, I'm not gonna come to the podcast in this episode and pretend that I'm this person that knows every goddamn thing and just gonna tell the world my opinion. No. So what I do is I look up a quote, I look up, definitions, I pull up Britannica, and then I try to think these things through. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not in the clinical space as far as I'm an accountant. I like money. I know basically everything there is to know about the numbers. You know what I'm saying? When I see equation or something I got to figure out, my mind automatically goes there. People that know me for a long time in grade school, and hey, I've always gotten straight A's in math, and whenever it comes to numbers, and I'm very fucking good at Excel. I have a lot of talent when it comes to that, but I don't have any skill set when it comes to psychology. I think I only took one class in undergrad, which is psychology 101. And then you find out the basics, but you don't know how that pertains to your life. Just like anything you learned in grade school and high school. Like, how do I know like that earth space science, 20 years later becomes a passion, and I like the shit, and now I can remember everything there is, there was back then, like I could recall every goddamn thing. It's such a weird thing. But what is Stockholm syndrome? And so, I like to start off with the quote. I like, as you can see at the bottom, the ticker that goes across. So I want to read it as it goes by. Let me see what it says. Okay. Stockholm syndrome is a psychological phenomenon where hostages or abuse victims is going too slow. Develop positive feelings towards their captors or abusers, often as a coping mechanism in traumatic situations. Like if you are at a workplace and like let's say you're in leadership and you are a manager, you are a director, you are CEO, CFO, every fucking day, you constantly in problem solving mode. You're constantly and trying to figure out this. You're trying to figure out the money. You're trying to figure out personnel. You got people that are abusing the system, abusing the punch in, the punch outs, and shit like that. Like you constantly put yourself in a save this goddamn place mode. And so like at first it was stressful, like you're trying to handle it. Hey, I'm getting experience. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Oh, I make this amount. But when it comes to like your mental, right? And people say, "Oh, you crazy." Like that's, when people say that, they could see it. "Oh, you crazy. I wouldn't do that." You know what I'm saying? But people oftentimes don't even, understand, or they would never put, their foot in your shoes. But when you're in that, you have the shoes. You in that shoe, what do you do? Do you just say, "Fuck it, I'm gone"? Like, or do you develop this, go down with the ship mentality? You save it because you feel responsible for whatever it is. And then what do you do? Especially if you getting pulled to this side, you getting pulled to that side. Like, what do you do? And so when it comes to these traumatic situations, like all the time, like something that you can't really explain it and you don't have control over it. And what do you do at this? Black people, we pray, we do all these things that fulfills our spiritual person. But what do you do as far as a coping mechanism? Some people drink. People love fucking happy hours. People love to eat after work. People love to hang out. People love to fucking trauma bond. So I found out that trauma bonding is a coping mechanism for a lot of people at work. And sometimes it could be positive because we all are experiencing the same things. And so you want to pull that person. They always say misery loves company, but sometimes in that person's mind, it's not misery. You want to, you need help. You need somebody to talk this through, and so you're gonna pull people to help you. And so, you as a leader, what do you do? Like, do you just say "fuck it, I'm gone," or do you try to problem solve? But is it really Stockholm syndrome? And that's what I'm trying to get at. So, um, I'm gonna read a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I'm learning same goddamn time. So it says psychological response wherein a captive begins to identify closely with his or her captors. Maybe not a person, but like a job or an entity or a thing, as well as with their agenda and demands. What are the demands of your job or the agenda of the job, or what is the end goal when you are faced with a traumatic situation? What is the end goal? The end goal is to always problem solve, to have success, and to make as much money as you can. Make sure that everybody around you is successful and achieving their goals and things like that. So, what do you do? Right? As far as coping mechanism, do you just leave? Do you just find another job? Say, I can't take this shit no more. I'm going crazy. And it's taboo to say that. And I've learned that being in the mental health space, you can't say crazy anymore. You got to say, imbalance and shit like that. So I'm just gonna say crazy. Nobody can't stop me from saying it. So the name of the syndrome is derived from a botched bank robbery. Remember, I said money heist, which was in Madrid. It was a botched bank robbery in Stockholm, Sweden, in 1973, where four employees of a credit bank were held hostage in the bank vault for 6 days. During the standoff, a seemingly egregious bond developed between a captive and a captor. One hostage, during a telephone call with Swedish Prime Minister Palme, stated that she fully trusted the captors but feared that she would die in a police assault on the building. Think about that. So, what happened during that time where she fully trusted the person? Like, what happened? So, like, was it I mean, we've seen these movies, John Q. We've seen, some similar effects of this Stockholm syndrome in a way where, if a person, place, or thing, you begin to understand the history of the workplace, the history of who came before you, the great leaders, and the this and the that, right? So you kind of see, okay, I gotta uphold the legacy of this person, or I gotta uphold the legacy of this, this bank, this, but in this situation with the bank heist, did the captor, tell them a sob story about, hey, I'm only doing this because I have a son. I have a son who's, ill, and the banking system, robs us every day, and they feel like they can just do whatever they want to do to us, and I lost tens and thousands of dollars, so I'm coming to take it back. And I know you feel the same way because why do you work here? You're working here for pennies and shit like that. It could be any reason where a person pulls on your heartstrings. And the same thing with the work. Like, you are here because you have bills, you got a baby, you need formula, this shit is expensive. And so you begin to be held captive by this idea of a legacy, ideal of, I make this amount of money, I make this, I have the sense of pride, whatever it is, ego. And so you begin to be held captive, like you have to do something every fucking time there's a trauma situation. And I'm here to tell you, like, it not only, being held captive is one thing, but enduring it and constantly getting beat up and abused by whatever it is, because people in general like to hold things over your head. But what if the idea of a position or a job holds it over it's held over your head? Like, okay, maybe I can't find nothing better, maybe I can't, live up to the expectations of what life brings. But, what do you do? Do you just quit? And I know a lot of people say they'll quit, but then you have someone, like my mother and other people, hey, never leave a situation without having another situation, you know. And I think people kind of say that in a figurative speech when they are in a relationship, where they'll say, somebody will say, you'll never find nothing better, and that is a form of, psychological abuse where, the person thinks that they can't find anything better. And then you start to think, like, yeah, I ain't gonna never find nobody better. But I'm here to tell you that that's not true. You can always find something better. Same thing with a job. That your skills, your mentality, the things that you learned, you can definitely find something better, bigger. And if you are a spiritual person, you're a prayer warrior. You always gonna pray for positive outcomes no matter what. So if you go in an interview, you're going to go and say, hey, I am good enough for this job, and here's why. You know, I mean, some people doctor their resume to fit whatever description it is, but a resume only gets you to the opportunity. Now, the opportunity is in front of you. What do you do? Like, can you turn your trauma into success by the things that you coped with, like your problem solving skills, like all of those things that you learned in the Stockholm syndrome, to not let that hold you down, and you begin to basically become smarter. You learn from your mistakes, you learn from all of these situations, and I'm here to tell you, like, you can parlay any trauma into a positive. I guarantee it. So, like I said, I'm learning. I mean, I want to talk about more, like, in depth, but I'm not a psychologist. Like I said, it just says that psychologists who have studied the syndrome believe that the bond is initially created when a captor threatens a captive's life, deliberates, and then chooses not to kill the captive. The captive's relief at the removal of the death threat is transposed into feelings of gratitude towards the captor for giving him or her life. As the Stockholm bank robber incident proves, it takes only a few days for this bond to cement, proving that early on the victim's desire to survive trumps the urge to hate the person who created the situation. Oh my God. You know what I'm saying? So when you are in that situation, and we just gonna hone it back to a job entity. Like, you there a couple of weeks, you making money, you solved the first problem. Now you gaining confidence and you're like, damn, I could do this. You know what I'm saying? Then it turned into another problem. It turns into another problem. But because you solved all these goddamn problems that it hit you from left and right and center and all that, now it begins to, like, hey, I can survive this now. And so whatever they throw at me, I can do it. But meanwhile, I didn't put none of this, like, I didn't put myself in a situation. Like, me as a person, the job, the surroundings. Like, I didn't put myself in a situation. So now I'm getting abused, and now I don't even know I'm getting abused. Other people don't know they're getting abused. And so when, other people say this is abuse, hell yeah, this is abuse. Fuck that. This is abuse. This is abuse. This is abuse. And now it's 15 people thinking that, yeah, we can't take this shit. So then you have, now either you're trauma bonding again, or, or you standing up to your captor, like saying, hey, this is wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want no more of this shit. You know what I'm saying? I can't take this. Like, what you're doing is wrong. This job is wrong. This entity is wrong. Like, and I think and I said I wasn't going to talk politics on this, but at what point, here in America, that uh we're going to have a complete revolt of of the situation, when things start to get dire for a lot of people, because unlike people that I know and stuff like that, like, we are smart. We always going to think we can get another job, and survive whatever situation. But at what point do people feel like, damn, this is enough? You know what I'm saying? We seen marches, we seen civil marches, we seen this and that. But what's so crazy is that, like, even police officers, working for the government, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to jeopardize your lifestyle, your life, and you don't want to go against the government, and it's a very hard situation to like keep people at bay, even though you're feeling the same way. You know what I'm saying? Inside, but you have a duty to fulfill. You were sworn to protect and serve, and mostly that's basically the government. You're served to protect the government, sworn to protect the government. And so what the fuck do you do? You know what I'm saying? So if you have millions and millions of people march to the White House, of course, that's a goddamn threat. So, like, how do you stop a system? I mean, it's going to take millions and upon millions, even people on that side, to say, hey, we've had enough. Like, something got to give. And so when you put pressure on whoever's at the top, and if and they feel it, and are impacted by it, like psychologically and mentally, like, of course changes is going to happen. But when you have someone at the highest power where they feel like they can do whatever they want to do, then it makes it hard to like look at that. You know what I'm saying? It makes it hard to understand their point of view. It makes it hard to, you know, even put yourself in their shoe, because you like, well, if we are all trauma bonding around here, and you're on this side, like, psychologically, we're going to revolt in general. And so, like I said, it just becomes hard. And so you know, when these people were stuck in the bank, like, how are they feeling? Like, man, I just gotta survive the next day. I just gotta survive the next day. So I'm gonna do whatever I can to make sure I appease, somebody that's holding something over me until I get out of this situation. But when do you get out? When do you press that button to say, I've had enough? Or psychologically, do you even know that you done had enough? Like, what is your breaking point? You know? And so I'm just here to say, like, man, if you are being held captive by an idea, a person, a place, a thing, I guess that's a noun, right? So what do you do? Like, do you just say, fuck it, I'm gone? Like, you leave the situation? Or do you endure it? Life is about choices. And so, I mean, eventually I know what to do. Like, I'm smart. God gave me discernment. I think that's, a spiritual standpoint or a spiritual approach, that you have discernment. You know what to do. You were given the ability to use your talent to take it somewhere else. And so you don't have to put up with abuse, anymore. And so, uh, I just want to let people know, like, if you had enough, you had enough. And, and I encourage, people, and like I said, I didn't really want to get in depth. I just want to learn like what the basics of what Stockholm syndrome is. And so, just with that, um, I encourage everybody to like figure out what their mental capacity is, like the full mental capacity. Write down what you can take. Write down what you won't allow. Whenever you go to your next job, you write it down. You jot it down, you write your cons and your pros, and then you begin to do a Venn diagram of the left side, right side, and then like, you take your past jobs. What didn't you like? What was very great about the situation when you was here. You take those positives and then you take your other experience. You do the same thing. And then you begin to see what's in the middle. Like, yeah, I like places that downtown. I like this, I like I know where I've worked in my experience, I can get this certain amount of money. Yeah, I know my lifestyle is a little different and I probably can't afford it, whatever, but that's neither here nor there. But you have to make sure that your mental capacity is not overloaded because you will be ineffective at any job if you feel like you're just taking, crap, or being held captive because of the idea of money. And and that's a scary situation because like money is a survival key for a lot of people, and so therefore like people do work 2, 3, 4 jobs and ride Uber just so they can survive. But like I said, would you rather have peace, or would you be held captive until you're broken? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, like I said, just I encourage people to check their mental and check their capacity. Check out what Stockholm syndrome means to you, because any definition can be interpreted, whatever way you want it to be interpreted. But this is how I interpret it. There aren't a lot of experiences where I've, been held at a Stockholm syndrome way, but you know, this is my story and I'm telling it, you know what I'm saying? So, um, you know, like I said in the beginning, I wanted to talk about a lot of things, right? I wanted to talk about mainly do comedy type things, but when your mental is fucked up, your passions become, they become put on the back burner, and then like, your passion starts to suffer. So, like I said, what do you do? Do you just discard your passions, or do you take your trauma and turn it to triumph? You know what I'm saying? Uh so yeah, you know, I encourage everybody. Hope I taught somebody something. I know I taught myself something this week, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, stay tuned for another episode. As my son would say, like and subscribe, to my YouTube channel. But yeah, you know, I'm over and out, man. How you turn this goddamn thing off? Oh, there we go.
What's happening?
What it is,
All
y'all?
you haters,
Center
check
Hill, see the
it
half, what it do?
out. 'Cause I
Hey,
hear ya.
Church Street,
Now
South
watch
Grand,
it.
stand up.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Haters so